So I heard about Zorka from a Tumblr ad, which maybe should have given me pause. But when I see an ad for a live show that's a bit different that I can easily go to, those tickets are bought before I can even have a second thought. It looked like a pared down Cirque du Soleil. How could I pass that up? I bought two tickets at $45 Canadian each plus fees because I wasn't going alone. And I told my partner when I was dragging him to the show, which was September 14th, a Saturday evening in downtown Halifax. The show was happening at the Lighthouse Arts Centre, a venue I had been to a couple of times, but not a very prestigious venue. The lobby was crowded when we entered, with both audience members and some performers milling around and taking pictures. There was also a display of Matt LeBlanc's art. He's the founder and producer. Each piece had a price tag of over $1,000. That should have been my second red flag because this really wasn't the kind of venue for that. We didn't hang around in the lobby for long and just went into the theater to find our seats. Oops, sorry. Okay, sorry. We were sitting in the second row, right up close to the stage. While we were waiting for the show, some of the performers were walking around the audience very menacingly, or as menacing as 12-year-old girls can be, with very straight faces and a rigid walk. Some of them were covered in fluorescent paint, and there were some black lights shining around and making them glow. It gave an interesting first impression. We got our first hints about what the show might be here. There was an aerial ring standing off to the side of the stage, so some circus elements would be incorporated, like I suspected when I first saw the ad. There were also two huge screens, one on either side of the stage, and we are definitely going to talk about these screens later. To try to get some more clues, I flipped through the program I'd been given at the door. There it is. It had the same marketing explanation that I had read before coming to the show. It had a vague timeline for the show and a list of the team. Notably, no on-stage talent was listed. And as a note, no choreographer listed either. Put a pin in that. But then I flipped to the back and finally got my first hint of a plot. Okay, so Zorka is a realm filled with tribes that has been destroyed by. And now Ellie, who is. Finds a crystal and activates it, restoring harmony. I'll tell you right now that that is as coherent as the plot gets. If I had only watched the show and not read the blurb, I would know less about what was going on. But I didn't know that yet. People were taking their seats, and a 10-minute countdown clock appeared on the screens.
Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, le spectacle Zorka va commencer dans 5.
It was at this point that we start to realize that most of the people around us knew someone that was performing in the show. They're all talking about the different acts and who's coming on stage when and getting their cameras ready. A woman and her son took their seats behind us, and not too long after, I felt a tap on my shoulder. The boy explains that he accidentally knocked over a soda can, and it was currently spilling its contents under my seat. I picked up the can, and the mom asked if there was anything left in it and asked for it back. Now, it was an accident, and he was just a kid, so I'm not mad. But having to be mindful of where I put my feet for the whole show so as not to step in the sticky puddle was annoying. Now, you might be asking, why didn't you just get up and find someone to clean up the mess? Well, the countdown was almost done at this point, meaning the show was about to start. Not only would I have no time to find someone and have them clean it up before the start of the show, but I didn't want to miss anything. Let me remind you how much I paid for this experience. So I let the puddle stand for now. So the countdown ended. The lights Well, the lights didn't really go down, they just changed, and the show started. Well, not really. First, the creator and producer Matt LeBlanc came out on stage to introduce the show.
Moi, j'ai pensé, hey, il y a ça, du soleil ici, il n'y a personne qui va venir à mon show. Mais on est 800 personnes ce soir.
He went over his personal history with art, how he began painting, and then what motivated him to create the sort of multidiscipline dynamic show that we were about to watch. He talked about taking his art beyond the canvas and creating a show to involve more local artists and something that more people could enjoy and interact with beyond a stagnant art gallery. Well, all of that sounded very promising. Everyone clapped, he stepped off the stage, and the lights went down, and the screens turned on, and with them, my expectations plummeted. At the start of the show, and periodically throughout, bits of the story were told on the screens next to the stage. It was mostly still landscape shots, and sometimes a performer would be green screened on top, with narration over the whole thing. But those landscape shots were all entirely AI generated. And the script also sounded very AI. With all the talk of supporting local artists and wanting to take his art beyond the canvas, I kind of expected to see real human art. I found myself just shaking my head at the screen every time they came on. You couldn't find any digital artists to create these backgrounds for you? It's not like we have an entire arts college here or anything. No, it's much better to steal other artists' work just so you can save some money. The thing that gets me about this is that he has been doing these shows for 13 years. And before this year, it seems the backgrounds for these screen segments were photoshopped together with standard Lightroom effects. They were nothing impressive, but they at least weren't stolen, as far as I know. And the story, what was this whole thing about? Well, I don't know. And I was really trying to figure it out. So, Zorka, the realm, was destroyed at some point by something. It is never explained. And Ellie wanders the realm. Who she is or where she comes from is, again, never explained. She finds a crystal, and what it is or what she needs to do with it is, you guessed it, not explained. After this first screen segment, we get our first dance segment and the first singer solo. Now, I have nothing but praise for all of the performers in the show. They were all great, and some performers were even quite impressive. The aerialist who performed on the hoop thing was fun to see, and I want to highlight the first soloist in our show in particular. She was playing this character who I took to calling the robot singer.
For you, then we really have to go.
And she did an amazing job with the two songs that she sang. Literally blew me away. She was way too good for this. But speaking of the songs, so if there were no artists creating the visuals for the narration segments, did they get local artists to write the songs or ask if they could use songs written by local artists? No, not at all. The whole thing was a jukebox musical made up of American pop songs, and I have my doubts that they licensed these songs to perform them, because of course, there are no songwriters in the Maritimes. So the visuals are stolen, the songs are stolen. What about the dancing? Well, if you remember, I mentioned that there was no choreographer listed in the program. And for a show that was so heavy on the dancing, that should raise some red flags. And it did for me. But as far as I can tell, the choreo is original. Presumably, it was someone or a few someones at these dance studios that are listed as partners, that choreographed these segments. But I wouldn't know because it doesn't say that anywhere. The closest is Shania Sishalone, the musical director, who actually seems to primarily be an author of fantasy romance books and doesn't seem to have had anything to do with the choreo. After trying to pay more attention to the story, I gleaned that there are 5 tribes, and only 2, maybe 3 of them get names. There's the luminaries, whose domain is presumably light, and then these guys were named, but I don't remember what it was, and their domain is a little inscrutable. Then there's who I've been calling the robots, but I think these were the Zorkins. But if all of these tribes live in Zorka, I'm not sure why only one of them were Zorkins. Then there's these guys dressed in fall leaves, and these guys looking like steampunk elves. And that's about all there is to say about them. As far as I could tell, there was no substance beyond that. There were performers wearing other sorts of costumes, but I think these guys, these 5, were the representatives of the tribes. So 5 tribes and some other guys. Now, what Ellie had to do to unite the tribes, I don't know. Really, the dancing and singing segments didn't seem to connect at all with the screen narration segments, and I have a theory about that, but I'll explain more later. Anyway, right before intermission, the narration said that Ellie had gotten half the crystal to light up, somehow, and the adventure would continue. When the lights came up, my partner and I just kind of looked at each other, but we had a half-hour intermission to kill. I assume it was so long because some of the performers had to change, so we grabbed some drinks and debriefed. Well, first I beelined to a staff member to ask if they could maybe find someone to mop up the soda puddle under my seat. The guy we approached didn't seem very sure of his capabilities to solve our problem, but we gently urged him to at least try to find someone who could. In the meantime, we saw that Matt was out in the lobby talking with people, and my partner asked if I wanted to go over. I think wisely declined because I didn't think I would be able to hold my tongue in that moment, and I don't enjoy being mean to people. So we went to find our seats again and saw a wet floor sign and no more puddles, so things were looking up. When we took our seats again, we started to wonder whether or not the performers were being compensated. Considering all of the other corners we noticed that were cut to avoid compensating artists, it wouldn't surprise me if they weren't. The cast was mostly children, and if this were a local community theater production or a school recital, well, I wouldn't be critiquing it as hard as I am, but it also wouldn't be an issue if they weren't getting paid. The ticket money for those kinds of shows goes back into those programs and supports the community. But this was a for-profit touring show, so I really hope that my speculation is wrong and that all of the performers on that stage were being compensated, especially considering, again, how much these tickets cost. The lady that was sitting next to my partner asked him if he knew anyone in the show. He, of course, said no, and she explained that her granddaughter was in it. I wanted to ask her if she was being paid for these 3 shows that she was doing, but again, I'm not one to stir the pot, and it looked like she was overall having a pleasant time, so I held off. The second act opened with my favorite performer, the robot soloist, doing another song, Highlight. The AI green screen segments continued, boo. And the story was something. Ellie went into a cavern and connected with nature. There were AI pictures of crystals and a forest, and a wooden door with carvings weirdly melding into each other. I really don't know. She met the luminaries and other tribes and activated the other half of the crystal, saving the realm. The back of the program makes it sound like Ellie struggled with whether or not she should activate the crystal, but I don't think the narration mentioned it. And here, I'm going to mention that, in my opinion, I think this narration was entirely written by ChatGPT. Overall, it was incredibly vague, and the AI visuals didn't match the narration. It went on about harmony and connecting with nature. And like I said, most of the characters weren't named, and the ones that were just had vague titles besides Ellie. I don't think a person wrote this. The narration explained nothing and didn't connect to the visuals, and definitely didn't connect to anything that was happening on stage. The songs chosen didn't connect to the story either. They sang Halo by Beyonce, What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish, Anyone by Demi Lovato, Million Reasons by Lady Gaga, among others. How any of these songs connected to the vague plot that was happening about connecting disparate tribes and restoring harmony, I just don't know. I didn't do a very good job describing the show, but then again, neither did the show. Hopefully, the clips I found can help illustrate this, but I'm mostly confused as to why there was a plot. Clearly, this was just a talent showcase. Why have the weak framing device at all? Most of the clips I've been using are from the Dieppe performance of the show, which, though similar, was not the same as the one I watched. The stage is a bit different, but a huge difference was the inclusion of a rock band as the steampunk elves. I did not get this at the show I saw, but they seem cool. So clearly, the individual performances aren't important to the framing device. I don't think I missed anything from the story because in our show, the steampunk elves didn't sing Bobby McGee. And if I'm right that the entire framing device was AI generated, again, why have it at all? The show concluded with all of the soloists singing Together by Demi Lovato,
Remember hearts, remember you, Daddy. Remember loving neighbors without expecting favor.
and then all of the dancers did a final number as well. I want to reiterate, they all did a great job. No notes. Now, I'm sure it's very clear at this point that I didn't enjoy the show, and I've expressed in the past that I hate that a standing ovation is now standard at the end of live shows. I'm a woman who wears women's clothes and normally does not have substantial pockets. So during live shows, I have my wallet, phone, keys, and whatever program I was given stacked on top of my lap, and I find it so awkward to have to quickly wrangle all of that to stand and clap. All of that said, I was sitting in a sea of parents whose children had just performed. This was not the time to make a point. So I stood and I clapped. Well, I tried to stand, but when I stood, I almost fell over because the spilled soda hadn't actually been cleaned up. It had only been spread around, and my sneakers had stuck to the floor. Matt came back out for some closing remarks and thanked everyone involved, and then invited all of the parents up to the front to take pictures of the cast on stage. And where were we? In the second row. We were immediately boxed in on all sides. We had to climb over the seats to be able to escape. But we made it. So after all of that, we went to Pizza Corner, we grabbed some pizza, and we sat on the wall in front of the church to debrief. Let's talk about that compensation question again. It was the main thing on our minds as we ate our pizza. I still don't have a definitive answer, but I did find a call on their website for people to submit their auditions for their next show. In that whole write up, nowhere did it even allude to compensation for this gig. So, again, I can't say for sure, but given the evidence, I can't help but come to the conclusion that no, none of the onstage talent was compensated for the performance. I despise this standard in the industry that artists need to work for exposure until they get their big break. And maybe I can understand that this is a small local performance and there are a lot of performers, and maybe everyone involved is okay with not getting direct compensation in exchange for the chance to perform in this show. But the thing that gets me is they're also not getting credit. None of the onstage talent is credited in the program, on the website, anywhere, which, though the bare minimum in my opinion, may be worth it for local unknowns to at least get a credit under their belt. And after that whole experience, I went again this year. What can I say? I'm a hater at heart, and I had a good time hating the creative choices made last year that I just knew it would be worth it for me to go again. I got an email from Matt LeBlanc himself letting me know that the tickets for this year's show were now on sale, and I bought them before I could think better of it. My partner refused to go with me this time, reasoning that it was a bad show and he did not want to knowingly go see a bad show. Lame and wrong. So this year I brought along my equally hater at heart friend. I've taken her to see a few out there shows before, like Murdoch Mysteries Live, Anne of Green Gables, the ballet, and Actual Wizard, a live magic show. So she was immediately up for it. But I did make sure to caveat this invitation with my past experience. This year's show was Aqualo, or Aqualo. It was pronounced both ways throughout the 2.5 hour show. But I'm going with Aqualo because that makes sense, and I'm pretty sure that's how Matt said it. From the name, I'm sure you can guess the underwater theme that was absolutely plastered everywhere. This year, I was mailed my ticket. I got a physical ticket instead of just a PDF. My friend was pretty excited about this because she had recently taken up junk journaling, and this made for a fun addition. So we get there, and this time there was no display of Matt LeBlanc's art, but there was a little photo op set up in the lobby with big jellyfish to pose with. I think this is a big improvement, not just because I didn't really like the art, but from a marketing perspective, this is a good idea. Giving people an interesting place to take pictures to post online and give you free advertising is smart. So we go inside. There was a big painted sign and a line of jellies that I had admittedly a bit too much fun walking through. There was also, again, several cast members in scaly, fishy bodysuits walking around very seriously. This year, I went on what I think was the sponsors night, as a few reps from the sponsors were there in the crowd, and instead of rows of seating, there were circular tables to sit at. We were table 14. Now, this sounds fancy, but in my opinion, serves no purpose and makes the viewing experience worse. There was no food being served, so the tables had no real function, and everyone had an assigned table. So when we showed up, all of the seats on the side of the table facing the stage were taken. So we had to go to the other side of the table and just turn our chairs around so we could actually see. This setup doesn't really work for this kind of show. Looking at the program, one of my critiques from last year has been addressed. There are choreographers listed in the credits. This is amazing and a definite step in the right direction. Something that is still missing, though, is the names of any of the performers. I can see the logic of not including them. There are a lot of names, and they are different for each city, so that could add a lot to the printing costs. I just think that there is definitely a way to do it. You definitely have a list of all the performers. I can't imagine you don't. So you could just mock up a basic list for each city with names and either character names or group titles and print them on regular paper to slip inside the glossy paper programs. I think it would be appreciated by the performers to have that recognition. So we get the same 10-minute countdown and then the lights go down. There's an opening video explaining Matt's artistic background and the history of his production company. The same things I heard last year. Matt does his opening spiel, very similar to last year as well, and the show starts. So, AI video technology has definitely gotten better in the last year, but it is still so uncanny and soulless. And can I go off for a minute? What is even the point of these screen segments? Last year, there was someone who was dressed as the main character who danced in a few segments, and using my analysis brain, I could see some of the plot reflected in the dance. But this year, nothing. I can't think of a single segment in the show that had anything to do with the plot being shown in the screen segments. So, what was the point? None of the imagery is real. It has no artistic value. The story, I suspect, is AI generated as well, so it's not a story that anyone wanted to tell, and none of it connects to anything happening on stage. You say you want to support local artists and give them a platform to showcase all of the hard work that often goes unappreciated. So, why are you so adamant on stealing from artists to create a framing narrative that has nothing to do with the rest of the show? So, what was the framing narrative supposed to be this time? According to the program, because I don't know how I could have figured it out by watching the show, Aqualo is a city built above an endless ocean, and then every other background setting is underwater. How that fits together, I don't know. Whatever. They have this thing called the Eternal Pearl, which looks like a giant glowing pearl, and it's at the core of the city, which is underwater, in a city that is explicitly above the water. It is a source of energy and emits a mystical song that holds everything in balance. Obviously, the Pearl's song goes quiet, and someone has to restore it. This time, there isn't even a named main character to do this, it just happens. The people of Aqualo, guardians, explorers, scholars, and dreamers, must unite and journey beyond their floating paradise to uncover the truth. From forgotten trenches to luminous caverns, through sacred ruins guarded by ocean spirits, their quest rekindles ancient alliances and reveals that true harmony depends not only on the pearl, but also on empathy, courage, and connection. Yeah, none of that happens. It's nowhere on stage, and it's not even really in the screen segments. Almost nothing actually happens in the screen segments, but I'll get more into that later. I would guess, like last year, the different styles of costumes were meant to denote these groups, the guardians, explorers, scholars, and dreamers, but I could not parse out if that was the case, and if it was, which was which. So the actual performers came out next, and just like last year, I have no critiques for them. Everyone did great, and most of them were children. They are blameless, and I love them all. And just like last year, there were a few standouts to me, and I'll point out when they come up. A criticism I do have, though, the first vocal performance was Always Remember Us This Way by Lady Gaga, a love song. And it was performed by a grown man and a young girl. Now, I don't blame either of them for this choice. As Matt said, most of the people on stage didn't know each other before this, and from the way they barely interacted on stage, it didn't look like they knew each other at all. But it was someone's choice to put them together for this, and I don't want to accuse anyone of anything just off of that. Hanlon's razor, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity, but at the very least, someone clearly didn't think through the optics of that, and at least a handful of other people didn't speak up. It's not a good look. But to complement another performance, these three ladies came out in these gorgeous dresses to sing Fix You by Coldplay and killed it. I especially loved this one with the scaled bodice. The costume designer and the makeup artist really did a great job. There is some serious talent and artistry on display here. At intermission, which was again a long 30 minutes, my friend and I went out to the lobby to stretch our legs. We found a place to chat and to people watch. Some of the performers were also milling about in the crowd. The lady in the scale dress that I liked actually came up to us and complimented my friend's earrings. We got to tell her how well we thought she did and how gorgeous the whole fit was. And of course, Matt was out there talking to people. He was standing near the photo spot, and my friend wanted to get a picture of us in the photo spot. So I thought it would be kind of funny if I went up to Matt and asked him to take our picture. It would also be a good opportunity to start a conversation with him and maybe ask some questions about his creative process, pry a little about my AI speculations, and maybe even ask about what sort of compensation the performers may or may not be getting. But before I can, my friend, unable to deal with the potential embarrassment, grabs someone else to take our picture. Matt walks away, opportunity lost. We go back in, we take our seats, and we watch the rest of the show. There's some great dancing, and great singing, and gorgeous costumes. Highlights include the lady in the scale dress coming out again and singing Bound to You from Burlesque. A guilty pleasure movie for me and a song I have screamed in the car many times. Again, killed it. I also liked what I'm calling the cheer group because they were doing a cheer routine. They were solid, but they did worry me a little bit because the flyers at times were so close to the overhead stage lights, but they never hit them. They were impressive. This year, we also had a rock band at our show. Absolute crowd pleaser. And back to the bad. Of course, the screen segments continued, and somehow they got worse. So last year, some of the performers were green screened onto the AI backgrounds, and they did that again this year. But because they were supposed to be underwater, they used AI to animate them swimming.
Vital to Aqualo's survival. Through ancient reefs and sunken arches they dive, chasing echoes, chasing hope.
It looked so bad, and my jaw was on the floor watching this. But if you can believe it, it got worse. There was an entire AI generated character. I think this was the ocean spirit guarding the sacred ruins from the blurb, but that could be totally wrong. The plot was incomprehensible.
Long ago, the ocean whispered stories of Marina. Spirit of the deep. Some believed she was only a legend. Rumors say she dwells beyond the eternal current.
I didn't even get a video of it because I was just so shocked to see it. She was this blue lady. The details on her skin shifted in really uncanny ways, and her eyes looked in different directions at several points. And she even had a voice that was AI generated. Her name was Morena, and she was the one to return the mystical song to the Eternal Pearl. The show rounded out with all of the vocalists coming out to sing a rendition of This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. Beautifully done. And then, a bit jarringly, the rock band came out to do a short set. It was a bit of a tonal shift, I'll admit, but the crowd was enjoying it, and endearingly, we could hear the rest of the cast singing along from backstage. Everyone was clearly having a lot of fun. And finally, all of the dancers came out for one last number. Of course, we had to finish off with one final speech by Matt. He talked about all the hard work everyone put in on a tight timeline and finished with a call to action to sell more tickets.
Kind of practice on their own, they practice as a group, but a lot of them only met Wednesday or Friday. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's pretty incredible when you think about it, right? So, good job. Good job, guys. And I think that's what makes Fusion so special. Like it's hell at first. Like the first night, I want to quit, right? I'm like, oh my god, what is this? But they all come together, right? So Thursday night is better, Friday afternoon is better, and Friday night is amazing. So the biggest compliment you can do is promote for tomorrow. We got 2 shows tomorrow. We got a family version in the afternoon, and we got an evening show. Tell all your friends. John, I know you only have 2 friends. Tell your 2 friends. And let's get that sold out the next couple days.
I had learned from last time, and we jumped up from our seats and booked it out of there, trying not to get stuck in a crowd of parents or crushed in a line to get out. We were quick, and we got ahead of most people and were able to air our thoughts out on the street afterwards. So, these are bad shows. Not bad performances, I want to reiterate, but the production and creative direction is bad. After the first show, after Matt's speeches, I found myself wondering, what part of this did Matt contribute to? All of the visuals are AI generated, and I suspected that the script was also AI generated. Just for a little vindication, I inputted the blurbs from the programs into a couple of AI detectors, and they came back 100% AI generated. So I'm much more confident now saying that the entire script was most likely AI generated and not written by a person. Other people are credited with the costumes and makeup and choreo. Behind the scenes videos that were released show others doing the principal photography for those green screen shots. Matt is credited as the producer, so I guess he handles the money. There is no credited director, but that makes sense, as no part of these shows actually relates to any other part, and I'm struggling to see a cohesive direction. There's also no set designer credited. Maybe Matt paints the sets. It was said during both shows that Matt wanted a better, more engaging way to showcase his art, something that wasn't a static gallery show. It was said that this whole thing started with him inviting some performers to showcase their talents during his gallery shows, and it has ballooned from there. It seems that it has also lost all semblance of a coherent artistic direction along the way. Matt, you lack artistic integrity, moral integrity, and ethical integrity. These shows look like they are a lot of fun for the performers, and I can see there's a lot of real talent and hard work involved in these shows. But none of it belongs to you. But you do seem like you're taking a lot of the credit. I don't want to see these shows stop. I want to see them get better. Find someone to actually write a coherent story. Find someone to make a few animated backgrounds, and maybe even find some local songwriters. Perhaps you could be transparent with how the performers are being compensated, or maybe compensate them a bit more, and give them the credit they deserve. You talk the talk about supporting local artists. Now it's time to walk the walk and put your sponsor money where your mouth is. Thanks for watching.